Yes, we're back here again for another discussion, another chat about racism in music. My name is Scratch Clark, Scratcher DVA, whatever you prefer. And yeah, it's again like I can't stress it enough. We have to have these talks. We have to have these discussions. I mean, not every day we can just let things go by and this is real. Racism is real, and racism is real in the music industry, and we're here to talk about it. Again, this is now the third chat I think we've had. The third chat. I appreciate everyone who's came on so far. Guests, all the guests we've had so far. Today we have another good chat, another good group of guests. We have Alexander Nutt, DJ, record label owner, events promoter, many things. I'm sure he will tell you when he comes through here in a bit. We've also got Aisha from Echolocation uh, Talent Agency, who deal with DJs, artists, and all sorts of other talent. And we have Sam Swanson from Cake Shop in Seoul, who a lot of DJs will say is definitely one of the best clubs you play in, nightclubs you're playing for I want to say our music, but all types of music under the umbrella, and that's in South Korea. It's called Cake Shop and Sam Swanson. So yes, should we just get the people in, get going? All right, guys, let's go from top. Let's go from top. Let's Sam, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, okay. My name is Sam, and I'm living and working out in Seoul. I handle management and curation over at Cake Shop, and uh, I also am interested in topics like tonight as well. And I think we've had a couple of chats about these kind of things actually in the past. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yes, yes. Should we go down, Alex?
I'm Alex Nutt. I run a record label called Eglo Records, and I DJ and do radio. Have done for the last sort of 15 plus years, and also have worked various positions in the music industry as well, from doing A&R, PR, promotion, management, like a whole bunch of different aspects of the music industry.
Great. All right, and Ish.
I'm Aisha. I work as a booker at Echolocation Talent Agency, but have also worked as a promoter before in South Africa and have DJed as well.
Great. All right. So I'm glad we've got us here. I mean, where do we start? It's such a long it's a long road. We've been. I mean, I think since in the last. I know Alex. This is something that's been on your mind, and you've been speaking up online and publicly for a long time now. It's not just in recent times. This is stuff you've always spoke about. Sam, we had a chat walking from Cake Shop to your other club about racism in music. Ish, I don't think we've spoke about Aisha. We haven't really spoke about this before, but working out of South Africa, in Cape Town, I'm sure you've got many things that you could say on it. But firstly, I mean, maybe Sam. Let's start with Sam. This is something I think I've ever said publicly. But I remember that chat when we was walking to the other club, and I remember you saying to me that I don't know if you remember this, but I remember you saying that you're finding it harder to book black artists to perform at Cake Shop in Seoul. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. I thought about it a bit, and I was like, actually, and this is like where like labels like regarding like underground and overground, and people are like underground, it's like hard to define, that kind of those ideas. But there's like, is it like a musical idea? But it can also be like a political idea. So one of the things that got me in Seoul was that when we started doing events, there weren't so many clubs, so we could do what we wanted, and we had a strong, really strong voice because it was maybe like a soul voice, like in terms of like only voice. But as there was more clubs, and they would book artists that would sell more, and there's like you can go pretty deep on this. I mean, like why are you booking a lot of white French artists? You know, that might be way less popular in the context of, I don't know, London or the world or Paris, but they do better in Asia. And actually that really bothered me, you know, because it's kind of an easy sell. But I think those artists, I mean, nothing against some of them. I mean, it's everyone's trying to make a living too, you know, and their art, you know. But I found it harder and harder. Yeah.
Sorry, go through.
No. Jump in.
I was just going to say that would that be to do with the people? I mean, maybe I asked you this and I've actually forgot your answer, but would that be to do with the actual customers in the club and what they, you know, what they're more receptive to, as opposed to having, you know, myself or, you know, Roscoe or whatever in the club? What is it like? Is it them or is it the promoters? Like, what? I don't understand really what it is. What's happened? Like, why is it a struggle? Are the people like not dancing or something? Like, what is it?
It's such a delicate subject, but it's like such an important subject, you know. Like, and it's like it's not only like black artists. It's like young black artists to older black artists, you know. And so, and it's all and maybe it's just maybe some of it's tradition, you know. Like, for example, like French stuff has been out here for so long, all through Asia, right? And it still has a really strong, you know, effect. And I can't quite put my finger on it why it's like that, you know. And then some black artists can do quite well. So it's not just, you know, easy to understand in that context either. But it definitely became harder over the last few years. And so things didn't get better in some ways, you know? And so, yeah, I think that's what we were talking about on that chat. And I remember that chat as well. Yeah.
Would that be to do with maybe, say, festivals who are, you know, maybe, I'm not sure, I don't know anything about festivals in South Korea, but if festivals are booking certain big French DJs or whatever, then they're the crowd are expecting Cake Shop to do the same. Is that part of the problem, or is that what it is?
Yeah, I think that's part of the problem as well. Yeah, for sure. Because that's part of like the DJ problem as well, right? Like, you know, it's like extends outwards. And yeah, totally. I think that's part of the problem. Yeah, I mean, I guess the issue is partly the venue and partly and the booker, and then it would partly be the audience. The audience has to bear some of the responsibility because they are, in the end, you know, support. But there's also a little bit of a difference between some of the audiences in Asia. They're a little bit more passive in their consumption, so it can sometimes be harder. But then I look at Europe and I see some of the same problems. So I don't quite. Yeah, right. So I don't know if it's about. I don't know if that's the answer either. You know. So I haven't been. I'm not really sure, but it's something that I think about a lot as well. And I'm not tooting my own horn or anything, because it's pretty easy for us to book black artists because most of the artists I like are black. So and that was the point of the club. But yeah, we just like, yeah, basically, yeah.
Alex ain't gonna play again now. I'm joking. Yeah, so Alex, do you think you think you could chime in on that?
It's interesting that you said in the last few years, right? I'm guessing, how far exactly are you going back in regards to you noticing there being a problem?
I'm thinking about just the last 3 or 4 years actually. I've been really like, this is getting kind of silly out here. But then I was wondering, maybe it's because music is getting a little bit less adventurous, and more
Exactly. Yeah.
mainstream.
Yeah, I think that's part of it, right? Is like the culture in general has become very much a one track, one lane situation, right? It's very homogenized. Whereas you used to have sort of these little pockets and groups and subcultures, and certainly, most of the things we're talking about in regards to dance music have all come from the black community and come from black club nights, black pirate radio, and then over the years, as they've become sort of co-opted by a white audience, it becomes like monetized and it just becomes about the numbers. So the cultural aspect of it is removed. And essentially that is what what's the word I'm looking for? When you separate like the person from and it becomes an object, like fetishization, right? It's like a fetishization of the culture. You separate the people in the community from the music itself, and it just becomes a business. And it just becomes a business like any other, just like anyone selling, flipping, for want of a better word, cakes. Do you know what I mean? Just it just becomes another conveyor belt, and inherently, the nature of capitalism and business is sort of white supremacy. Hence, you end up in this position that we're at right now with a whitewashed culture.
Right. Or I
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
like that. Or Asian supremacy or another. But the fetishization of culture is really interesting too, because I was actually thinking about something similar to that earlier today, and about like there was this festival last year over in Korea, and it was called it was like the Black Music Festival, but there was literally no black people on the festival lineup. So
Wait,
it's
where's
all
this? Where?
this is in Seoul. This is in Seoul. So this is like
Wow.
a Korean hip hop festival, and it's all Korean rappers, right? So that's like completely separating out all black hip hop acts, which is crazy. But over the last month, and not to throw the Korean hip hop scene under the bus, which I've done a couple times, but whatever. But it's that was completely crazy. Like that's just crazy. So over the last month, you see like all these Black Lives Matter coming from the Korean hip hop artists who are becoming huge, right? And they're some of them are donating like a little bit of money or whatever, but there's no actual interaction with black hip hop artists booking in this country. Just give them a support act. There's a ton of concerts with huge amounts of money, or even a feature on an album, or hook up a couple of producers or something, just anything. So it's really unnerving and uncomfortable, that part of and it's not because of totally because of nationality, because there's a lot of Korean Americans on, but it is partly because of language. But some of that can be overcome, anyways. Yeah, with music, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, I find that interesting. I mean, Asha, do you working with like dealing with lots of different DJs and acts all up and down, sort of like different kind of dance spectrum, whatever you want to call it. Do you ever see any irregularities or whatever when you're dealing with, someone as opposed to, I don't know, don't want to say mad decent, but someone of that nature, like, or these house techno guys? I mean, can you tell us
Yeah,
a
all
bit
the
about,
time.
working? Yeah,
I
you
think
do.
I think we see that all the time, and it's definitely a massive issue in the scene, especially when you look at club lineups and also especially festival lineups. Generally, the majority of the lineup are white, and they have very few black artists on there. And in electronic music, I find it crazy considering that techno, for example, has come from black people. Why are artists such as Theo Parrish or people like Moody Man constantly overlooked over a lot of bigger techno artists that are white? And I think this happens over and over again. Those are just two examples, but it's I think similar to what Sam said earlier. I think it's a safety thing. I think people aren't a safety thing in a sense about like they're booking artists and names that they know are going to sell them tickets rather than wanting to do something that is really about music, and I think that has got a lot lost along the way.
But as an agent, because I was speaking to someone about this the other day. Not. I mean, I know the work you do, not necessarily yourself, but just the whole idea of an agent now. Yeah, is like I feel like agents have to take some sort of everyone can take some responsibility, right? But I feel like agents can take some responsibility because they have a lot of power over the lineups. It's between them and the promoters. You know what I'm saying? So. Are agents talking to each other to try and combat this as well? Because it would make sense that they did. You know what I'm saying? If they're going to continue working, because or is it agents are just waiting to hurry up and book? Not that I have any problem with these Donnies. I love Jack Master, but waiting to book Jack Master and Claire Fifi just to get back to normal, or are they thinking, hold on a minute, we need to do something because you are agents at the end of the day?
Yeah, totally. Within our company, we've had a lot of conversations and we've pulled up a lot of promoters on it. And I'm not going to name names on that, but it's something that we at my company I know take very seriously. I think there is an issue with agents talking to each other that don't work in the same company, because there's always been this culture of other agents hating each other, and that is an issue, but for the most part, a lot of it does come down to the promoters and, like Sam also said, the ticket buyers, and people at the end of the day just end up becoming friends with certain artists and they just get booked for all of their shows. And when you've got one or two promoters that dominate the majority of the festivals in the country, it can become quite difficult. There's only so much power you have and so much voice that you have, when it comes to promoters and it comes down to booking artists. I think there's a lot of work to be done. I think it's very complicated and complex, but like you said, we all need to be having these conversations a lot more to kind of, start that process and to make things better. And I work a lot on live artists as well, in the reggae scene and Afrobeat. It's difficult. It's really difficult. And when you have certain promoters that kind of say to you things like, "Oh, I'm concerned that artist isn't going to draw the right crowd," across, well, what do you really mean by that? Do you know what I mean? Like, there's an issue.
Yeah, well, I want to speak about that a bit later, not a bit later on about I know because you did some work with Afro Nation and the whole Westwood thing, and a couple years ago was it now? So that's an interesting thing there. But just going back to what you said about so you don't have much power because the ticket buyers and the promoters, and then whole end of result is the money bit, getting the tickets. I just want to throw that to Alex. Your thoughts on that, because as you're saying, the whole capitalist idea of it is maybe what's an issue as well. And I don't want to take it away from the race issue, but that could be part. So as an agent, you're like, we got to do these things for the money, but then you have another idea, Alex. I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean that's all part of the problem, right? Is doing it for the money. Is that I mean, in terms of kind of the way things are often portrayed culturally, you have these sayings, which is like, "Oh, I'm doing it for the culture," or "Ah, it's part of the game." And to me, those are two sort of separate ways of doing things. Which is the game. If you're doing it for the game, if it's all part of the game's got no social responsibility. The game's about exploitation. Even the word "the game" comes from, prostitution. Do you know what I mean? If you're doing it, if it's part of the game, oh, you just take a hit. It's part of the game. If you're just making money as an agent, oh yeah, we need £4,000 for this artist, but it's going to be in a completely wrong venue to a completely whitewashed audience. But that person was on the front of DJ magazine, so it doesn't really matter. Like, that's the game. It holds no social responsibility. It's got no commitment to the culture. Whereas people, I'm doing it for the culture. Okay, cool. Are you really? Because if you're doing it for the culture, there's a lot of things we can talk about. Do you know what I mean? If you're talking about there is a social responsibility between both artists and agents, I don't even think the venues even a part of it, because most of these big venues are racist institutions, as we know. They've, for the longest amount of time, 30 odd years, been avoiding having black audiences in their venues. They say that black audiences don't spend enough money on alcohol. They say that there's violence brought into the venue. So they never used to want to book garage and drum and bass and hip hop nights. They'd rather book house and techno nights. And we all know at house and techno nights, everyone's bringing the most amount of drugs in there. So all of that idea is a complete sham in the first place, right? So I think it's between the artist and the agent. I know for myself, whenever I work with an agent, I'll tell them I'll rather take a show that is with the right promoters and the right audience for less money in a venue where it's got a great audience and a great sound system and just the right ideology over the big paying gig that's just in some soulless, corny venue that just perpetuates this whole whitewashed culture, which ultimately is leading us to a cliff edge. Do you know what I mean? Where we're just in this homogenized, corny game of music when that's not the way like art's not meant to be thought about first and foremost in a sort of functional monetized way. Do you know what I mean? We have to protect the cultures that it comes from and build the audiences. We have a responsibility to educate and entertain and build these audiences so they're aware of like the history and that it's got a past, present and future, not just a it's not just a blank slate and we just move forwards based on how much money we can make, because that's why we got into this whole mess.
Yeah, I'm hearing that. I just want to throw something you said there as well about where people are playing, basically. So having these people playing these places where I've got no culture or no vibe or whatever for 10,000, whatever, like it just got me to thinking about moving forward after this pandemic and whatever. Maybe I could speak to Sam about this, and Ish as well, actually. That I'm in my head, I'm seeing people wanting to try and make change. So I want to see these festival lineups be black, like book black people, black women, black everything, book that, right? Um, Clubs.
Is that going to change? That's what I thought about that recently too. Will this result in less risk, or will the social movements happening now be more influential than that?
Well, what I wanted to say was that the 10K, I mean, maybe not so much yourself, Sam, but for the promoters, you want them 10K 5K DJs after this pandemic, and everyone's had a loss of money. Them 10K 5K DJs are now going to be going and playing the 1K £800 spots. What I mean, some of us have been playing because we can't play your 10K spots. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I just wanted to throw that out there because I feel like that's going to be a real thing, and
Can I just say
agents
something
thinking
as well,
about that
Scratch?
or whatever.
Can I just,
Yeah, go through.
before you carry on, because I completely agree with you, and it's interesting as someone who puts on events and is a promoter of sorts. The amount of times you've reached out to people, artists, DJs, and said, "Ah, you're gonna love this place." Do you know what I mean? This is exactly where you need to be playing, but it's this size of a venue, and I don't want to have a inflated door price because I don't want to exclude people from attending the night. Because obviously, if you have a huge inflated door price, it's only going to attract a certain demographic of people, right? And I'm not talking about skin color. I'm just talking about your sort of economic status, yeah. And we all know that, like, we don't want to end up in a club that's just full of sort of bankers and cokeheads. Do you know what I mean? Like, we want to bring in young people who only got a part-time job and they're just spending their last bit of money to come to a club night. And all of a sudden, these artists that used to turn down all these nights are now going to start saying yes to things because it's their only option. And I think again, we've got social responsibility to tell these people, nah, mate, you didn't want to be here before. This wasn't the place that you used to want to
I
play.
agree.
And now
I
all of a
agree.
sudden, yeah, we need to start, like, we have to call that shit out when we see it.
Whoever is actually around after this pandemic, after is will have a greater opportunity to show who they are, rather than being this like constant competitive fervor, and that may be a good thing, if their intentions are whatever, pure or
Pure. Yeah.
good for
Well,
the
I keep
future.
saying about Comfort Island. I think that there's going to be an island in the
Mm.
musical like realm. There's going to be an island, and it's going to be called Comfort Island. And see there, There's going to be like DJs who are going to play on Comfort Island for 10K to people who want to pay 10K a ticket to get in, for agents who want to book DJs to play for 10K. And that's going to be Comfort Island. And they're going to be their own little comfortable racist world that we don't like. It's gonna be like back in the day when you see someone you know walking into TK Maxx. Look at you. I don't mess with you. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Now, obviously that's fine now. It was fine then, but like this island is gonna be like that. Oh, you on that? Are you playing on them lineups with no black people? Oh, okay. You stay over there then. That's what I think is gonna happen. And we are gonna continue to change stuff here. Like, and this is gonna, and maybe the scene was in your. I do think that Alex has a bit of a fairy tale world in his mind of what the music industry is going to go to, but maybe that's the start of the road. That the people who can't hack what's about to happen, which is change, are going to fall off, and the people who want to carry on what they're doing are going to carry on their own little island. And that's my prediction for the future anyway. But sorry, Ish, you was going to say something earlier.
I do think it's super important to remember that, you know, these big venues that we were talking about that are charging extortionate money, and, you know, therefore the crowds are predominantly white. I think all of that stuff needs to change, and I think it does. Of course, it comes down to artist fees, ticket prices and stuff like that. But it's also, again, about creating a space again where a safe space for people to go to. For, you know, why is it that so many nights that used to be predominantly black are now white? And why is it that, Scratcher, we've spoken about this before, like maybe a lot of black people don't go to these particular venues because they know it's going to be difficult for them to get into, and are they just going to get trouble? And I think everything just needs to be dismantled and everything needs to be rebuilt. Ultimately, I think that really needs to happen. I think it's easy to call out one particular thing over something else, but there's so much in this industry wrong that just needs to change, because there's so many fucking rich, powerful people at the top that are controlling everything in the background that we don't always see. Do you know what I mean?
I'm hearing that, and when I think about Sam, like I think about Cake Shop, and I think about if you decide to do things, like you've always booked black artists, it's not a thing, you know what I mean? But if you decide to, I don't know, so say you did like black people getting free, right, or something like that, yeah, like at Cake Shop, fam, right. For you out in Seoul, we can say this about London. We could do like black people getting free in I don't know, like in Corsica or something. But for you, that's like, I feel that like Korean racism is different. Like not music, like it's deep. Like it's a different thing. It's a whole different race. Like you have racist ads on your TV and stuff today. You know what I'm saying? So, I just it's interesting to see how like you can even combat that out there for them.
No, right. It's a really complex thing, you know, and then it's also like tied into just nationalities. So if it's a black artist from Africa versus England, it's totally different as well, right? And I also think there's like, it depends what generation. Like if it's a young black artist, I feel like it's like can be totally different than if it's an old black artist. I know, like when I look at techno clubs, and I sometimes see old black artists in them, but I don't see young black artists playing them generally. And so, with the audience,
is that in Seoul? You mean?
I just think in a lot of places. I think white audiences are generally comfortable with older black artists for whatever reason. I don't know. It's like that in Europe as well, right? And isn't it the same thing?
I think so.
I'm not sure. I mean, in Europe, I feel like white people are just comfortable to see white people. That's another thing that I can't remember. No, real talk, man. Like, I mean, I've had this conversation a few times recently. Like, me and Plastician, for example, whatever, coming to the club, yeah, and that translation that Plastician has between him and the front row of 10 white boys is a different translation to me. We could play the same set, but when they're looking at him and he's down the decks, they see themselves in him. They see themselves in Scream. They see themselves in you. You know what I mean? Maybe not you, Alex, because I thought you was mixed race, to be honest. But like, I'm talking about Scream and Plastician, yeah. Like, bro, they'll see themselves in them, and then I'll come on. It's like, yeah, this is cool, but they don't see themselves in me. and there ain't no one to see themselves in me because everybody's white. So it's like it's a whole different translation, I think.
How crazy is
It's
that,
mad
given that you go back 25, 30 years and it's the complete opposite situation? It's been flipped on its head.
yeah. So what is that then? What is that then?
The
What exactly is that?
commodification of culture. The commodification of culture. When it started off, everybody wasn't doing it because they thought they was going to pay all their bills and make a living and all this kind of stuff. That came later, right? When things grew. So whereas it just started out literally as a culture, as a subculture, it's now turned into a way of, you know, it's turned into the fucking machine. It's turned into just a business, like any other business. And ultimately, if you do things based on numbers, it's always going to lead you to that white place.
Is that because some places have population percentages that lean towards white, or is it dependent on where the actual gig is?
I think that's just because the world's like a racist place.
Yeah,
Right.
I don't think. I mean, even trying to think of the last time I played to just black people. I actually cannot think seriously. Like I can't think, and I've been in many cities. You know what I mean? Like so, it's a mad one. Even when I come to South Africa to play for you, I mean, I was shocked at that. I was super shocked.
Yeah.
You know, I know it's Cape Town, but I was shocked. I don't know what I thought. I thought I was gonna be like all the township and just some dung 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 drums, and I got there and it was this bag of like dubstep looking guys or something like spiky hair, and I was like, okay. Actually, no, there was that Sunday party we played, which was pretty black. I like that one, Cold Turkey, but the other parties was really white, and I don't know, man. It's just something that everybody needs to get get together and think about changing. You know what I mean?
But you know what? So Scratch, I would say you're doing a lot of black parties a disservice by saying that they don't exist, because there are hundreds of them. Well, certainly in the UK.
Yeah, of course, but not there's black parties. There's black parties. Okay, so for example, an Eglo party,
like
I would
it's
consider
segregated, right? It's segregated. It's not considered a part of this music industry
what I'm
machine
saying.
thing. It's not on Resident Advisor.
Right? Yeah. It's not.
And it's not
Resident
represented
Advisor.
on Boiler Room. It's not represented on these big platforms.
Good point.
That's it. Yeah. Boiler Room. Let's talk about Boiler Room quickly. No. Just because that's interesting, because having an agent here and having yourself, Alex, and all three of you actually can speak to this. So Boiler Room, you're a promoter and you're an agent and you're a DJ. So how important is Boiler Room, right? Because if certain DJs are getting the shine on Boiler Room, let's say white techno or not just techno, house, whatever, just white DJs, right? Getting certain shine on Boiler Room, that then turns into someone like yourself being able to say to someone like Sam, yo, look at this Boiler Room, look how many hits it's got, let's do this, which turns into 10K. Someone else, you know, from you know the hood or like from grime or any of this nature, who isn't easily brought onto Boiler Room or isn't even considered for as a Boiler Room set, can't then get that pull to get that show, to get that 10K. It's interesting. Like I feel that, like, especially with the younger generation of DJs and artists, they're like they feel that they have to do a Boiler Room to get to a certain place to maybe get to soul, to play in soul. Do you as a promoter look at Boiler Room to think about people to book? Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I take a look at, you know, I had a point where, and I still don't, but like where I don't look at like numbers on, say, Facebook or whatever. But actually, it's so dangerous to do that, because if you don't pay attention to that, it's like you actually can't grasp where the crowd's moving. The Boiler Room, yeah, I check that. You got to check it, because it tells you a lot. But sometimes it's confusing because you don't know where they're coming from or what's real.
But what did you
not.
do? What did you do before that? Okay, but I guess, but I mean, I haven't seen like Kate Shop's schedule the last couple of years, but I mean, is it reflective in your shows who you're booking?
yeah. So if you get off that, because actually I've done this. It's like I did this myself. If you get off it, you might have better lineups, especially if you look back on them. They'll look better, and but they might not work very well financially. Like it really helps financially to look at these numbers. So it's really hard to pull away. And this is what Alexander's saying about like how we're all tied up in this the capitalism aspect. But then not to get a resident advisor either, but like I mean, they favor certain shows, so they're gonna give you the party of the night or whatever. And if you book a certain DJ, and you kind of know who they're gonna give it that to, you know what they're into. So yeah, numbers matter.
It's a new thing, right? They didn't used to, because it didn't used to exist.
Yeah.
Right, and it shouldn't.
But here's the flip, though. Now places like Resident Advisor, who since the last 2 weeks has just been like black. I mean, their Twitter is just like been taken over by blackness. So, with that said, and like Boiler Room, doing what they say they're going to do, then for the promoters who are looking at these things, that could be good, good change right there.
It's just changing the piece. It's just changing the pieces on the chessboard. The game's still the same. It's still going to alienate a whole like 90% of everybody else that isn't a part of that. Every culture, ethnicity, nationality. If you're not a piece in that game, you're just excluded. So it won't benefit black culture at all. It'll benefit maybe 10 people. What we need to do is move the attention away from these platforms and stop giving them so much power. Stop allowing them to hold so much power over the culture.
How would you suggest to do that?
Well, there used to be, a lot of different sort of grassroots, underground. I don't want to say platforms because this is sort of pre-social media, but a lot more magazines and radio shows and sort of even clothes stores and record shops and essentially places that created community, genuine community, not a community based on algorithms or a community based on financial success, but a community based on a love and appreciation of the music. So if you had like metalheads, going on back in the day in Shoreditch, if they brought out a new artist, a new DJ on that night, everyone's going to go crazy. Oh, great. This is a new person. I never heard them. I'm hearing something new for the time. This is an exciting moment. They're not going, oh, I've never seen this person on the front of Boiler Room before. Like, what the hell is that? You know what I mean? Like, even going back to Forward, not going back that long, Forward at Plastic People, it was like that. You know what I mean? You might have somebody who built up a little buzz from some tunes running, and then they end up playing there, and everybody flocks there to hear them because they want to hear what they've got. You know what I mean? Oh, I heard about this person. There's a good little buzz, but it's not because that person, I'm going to go and buy a ticket because I know there's going to be loads of other people there. I think that's also another, like, there is responsibility on the crowd as well, because I think newer crowds have developed bad habits. They've also fallen into that trap. There's almost an insecurity where it's like, there's not loads of people here. I feel insecure. You know what I mean? Like, can I dance? Should I just look at my phone? What do I do? Whereas, I remember going to see James Blake play it Forward for the first time. There's maybe like 4 people in that room, like me, Fatima, Skilliam, Elijah, and he was buzzing. Do you know what I mean? He had loads of tunes out already. He had a good, he had a nice little buzz going, but it hadn't broken into that kind of, big mainstream commercial zone. So yeah, maybe a couple of months later, you had a massive queue, and then
anyway,
everybody.
Don't worry about him. He's fine. He's got enough shows.
Yeah. Well, anyway, my point being, Scratch. Anyway, once it breaks into that big mainstream thing, it actually excludes the genuine fans who want to come and buy a ticket to get in, and you're forced to have this massive queue going down the street based off of like the hype brigade. Do you know what I mean? That just heard about it on some Resident Advisor or Boiler Room type of thing, and it actually excludes a lot of the, I think that's been a problem in the community for a while, is that a lot of the diehard ravers stopped going out because they stopped enjoying the atmosphere of parties.
Maybe because there was no black people. Hear what I'm saying. Just to take it away from the whole idea of the tickets and the money thing, black people need to be playing in the clubs. Right. Let's get back to that. And it's like you're saying, Alex, if you're going to get rid of the money aspect of it and start again, which I think sounds kind of crazy because people want to be paid, right?
It's not getting rid of it. No, you're missing the point. It's having social it's having a social responsibility. So therefore, if you're a white promoter, let's say you're a white promoter and you're booking.
Oh, sorry. Can I just say sorry? Because I'm going to forget. I'm going to forget what I'm going to say. Basically, what I was going to say was black people, black DJs, artists need to be playing these clubs over the white people who play in these clubs who are mediocre. That's what I was trying to say. Sorry, I lost it. These Donnies are mediocre. I don't care about their numbers. They're mediocre. What they're actually doing on the decks and what they're playing is mediocre and boring. And we need to be playing in their place. End of story. That's what I was trying to say. I'm not even sure if that's a question or what, but that's it.
It sounds like a statement, but I think, what that means is we need to create a level playing field, right? So that mediocre white artists aren't ahead of up and coming new really exciting black artists. And again, the way around that is the sort of to have responsibility to the culture from which it came, instead of just placing the numbers at the top of it. Going back to what I was about to say there as well, and it ties into that what we're talking about is, yeah, if you're a white promoter and you book, and this is just an example, if you book like an Afrobeat artist, yeah, some big don, let's say it's like Ebo Taylor or somebody like that, right? You got a responsibility to promote that artist within the black community. You can't just be going to white student unions and putting up posters there because these people will come and buy a ticket, right? You've got to actually think about the cultural and social aspects and impact of what you're doing. So yeah, you can't just be a white promoter promoting to only white people through your avenues. If you're booking black art and black artists, you have to be reaching out actively to the black community to try and get people into the club that represent the art and culture that you're trying to make money from.
Yeah, which is something that is massively missing at the moment as well, especially when it comes to really big promoters, not like smaller club promoters, but huge promoters and these biggies don't know much culture. They jump on a culture like if it's someone popping, maybe like a J Hus or Burner Boy or whatever, because they know it's going to sell them tickets and then make them money. But when it maybe come down to promoting it, they don't know how to do that. They don't know how to the communities and how to promote. And this is why a bigger picture, it's like those hiring structures need to change within those companies. They need to be getting more people in companies, that are black and that do understand it. There needs to just be like a more fair playing ground within the record labels, the big venues. And that's what I meant about earlier, about dismantling the system slightly in that sense, because there is so much that needs to change before we can really make a big impact.
Yes, just on that there, I would like to, if we can, swap someone out and get KG in, because there was something that I wanted to speak to KG about with Ish on the Afro Nation situation. Okay,
Yo.
Sam's gone. What the?
Shit, sorry. Oh, my bad. I just bulldozed in, Wow.
Hey, Barry said Black Lives Matter and that.
Yo,
Barry.
hey.
He said BLM.
Bro, what an entrance. Hi, Alex. Hi, Isha.
Hi, you all right?
I'm good, thank you.
Yes. Yeah, no, I wanted to bring you in right there.
Sorry, Sam.
No remorse. Now, big up Sam and send it out to all the cake shop boys. Send it out to all the
Hold
cake shop
tight,
crew
Cake Shop, for
out there,
real.
man. Doing is one of the best clubs to play ever. Right. Karen KG inside the place. I was speaking to KG on the phone the other day, and Afro Nation come up, and
Yeah.
you know, Karen, like, you know, if you listen to Karen's sets from what they like, you know, the Afro beats, all the Afro, any Afro, you know what I'm saying? Any Afro, the
Yeah.
funky, the house, and I know that's definitely represented at Afro Nation. But what I want to say is the Westwood situation was what sort of like got my back up a bit, because I don't understand how Westwood is someone who needs to be playing the headline in Afro Nation. Like, and as someone who works on that, why and how are these things happening is the question I think I'm trying to ask.
Well, firstly, he definitely wasn't a headliner act. Secondly, I think it's important to remember that Afro Nation is about celebrating Black culture and the African diaspora and Black artists and Black music. I know that they see themselves as an inclusive festival. I think I can't say exactly. I'm not really involved in the booking side of it at all. In fact, I'm not really involved in the festival. But what I do know is that I think it was as simple as him asking to play, and then finding a like, okay, cool, you can play.
Who's made him so comfortable to take up spaces that way? You see what I'm saying? There are many others that I can say, many other Westwoods, for example, without naming any names. On the flip side, that why we don't have any Black equivalents to that, because there is no room to occupy those said spaces. So it just goes back to the ecosystem and how comfortable that system has made certain, you know, white people that are faces of the culture to be entitled to those spaces. It's simple as that. They've had room to maneuver in those spaces for so long. So who can contend against that? Who can challenge that?
I mean, it's a very good point. And it's like, why was he the face of hip hop on the BBC for so many years, you know? I think it's like things like that go back for so long that has allowed him to feel that way. I don't know. I can't. Yeah, it's a lot of things, isn't it?
Because it goes back down to, like, okay, if we're talking about the lack of representation and the lack of visibility, there are so many guys out there and women and the like that are great hosts, great DJs, etc., that aren't able to leverage their careers because we've got one man that's been allowed to take up that spot for like 1,000 years, but no one else has managed to challenge that. Just talking about how going back to sort of the lack of visibility and how and changing that and challenging that, we have to look at the people that are within those companies, those that are in charge of programming, for example, because I know Isha I don't think that's your lane. I think because you book, but I don't think, you know, festival programming is a different lane, isn't it? Completely.
Yeah, it is a completely different lane. Yeah. It's not about,
In that case, looking at who's fronting the programming and who also is I guess intentional about discovering new talent as well, and not so content with there always being like a white gaze on Black art forms, which I feel like is just the norm right now. It surpasses ticket sales and all that type of thing. It's like, how do we set a new standard? It starts with the institutions that ultimately you guys are affiliated with. You see what I'm saying?
I totally agree with you. I think what I would say is that Afro Nation maybe is a bad example because pretty much every single artist on their lineup black, and they obviously made a very big point of booking a festival, you know, and I think they did that successfully. And I'm not just saying that because I do think they did that successfully.
No, I agree.
I think it's
it was just a West
massive. Yeah, what I was saying to Scratcher earlier, I think it's a massive problem generally within the promoter culture and the festival booking culture, 100%. And there is something that does need to change, something that needs to be looked at, because you do look at very commercial lineups. Why is the majority of these lineups white, predominantly white, when there are hundreds of other black artists that are just as big as, say, one act that isn't on there? And it is something that needs to be looked at and something that needs to change, and we need to be asking the questions as to why it's like that, and asking people those questions as to why it's like that, and yeah, really look at change.
Yeah.
I mean, Alex, you've got this like idea. Like, I feel like you and Wiley share the same idea of taking it back to the village. Like, is that a real thing? Like, really going back to the village? Like, what does like going back to the village look like?
It's not a completely, new idea. It's just that you have, creative economies, which means if you created something yourself, you don't just hand it over for other people to sell and exploit. You make sure that, if you're a record label, if you're a manager, that you try and keep it, certainly from the beginning, as sort of grassroots and close-knit and representational of the culture and the way you want to see it go forwards. And you kind of accept the fact that, you're not just there for sort of exponential growth. You know what I mean? There's more to it than just simply growing a business and making loads of money. There are social and cultural implications with what you do, and like we're talking about with as you're saying about a white gaze and things like that. That again just goes back to the numbers game, because if you're looking at numbers, if you're looking at how do we grow this, how do we make the most amount of money, it's going to end up getting whitewashed, because going to look at the UK. What are the numbers of non-white people in the UK? I think it's something like 20% of the population or something like that. So where are the numbers going to go? They're going to go. It's going to end up representing that 80%, isn't it? In the end, do you know what I mean? So if you don't run your business or look out for your culture in sort of a socially and culturally aware way, and just do it purely from a finance related way, then yeah, it's going to end up getting fucked up. And what Wiley's talking about, I'm not saying I agree with everything Wiley says, but yeah, it's called a cottage industry, isn't it? When you have small industries that do very well for themselves because the means of production are controlled by the people who created it. And that's what we need, you know what I mean? The people who create things need to control the means of production. If you work, maybe not now, but back in the day, if you worked in a factory for like 20, 30 years, they'll probably give you shares in that factory. You get a nice shiny watch because you've contributed so much to it and you've built so much that, you know what I mean, you're now a shareholder. And we need to look at the way that we create culture in that kind of way. The flipping head of EMI or Atlantic Records shouldn't be the shareholder of Afrobeats. You know what I mean?
What, is that true?
I feel like finance is as much as I definitely agree. I share the same sentiments as Alex completely. Like, you're absolutely dropping gems. But, finance is also, I say that we can't disregard that too much as well, because you have to think about us going back to the system and how we're trying to thrive in that, in a structure that is built to disempower Black communities. So in that way, shape or form, in a way of challenging that, how do you get Black artists to the money? Why is it that we're only able to monetize our art in the hands of someone else? Our art is only monetized in someone else's hands. Like, it's real talk though. We can pretend and be like, oh, this is so fun, and people want to get paid and earn a living. Like, it's your purpose for a reason.
Yeah.
But you gotta see it as sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Alex. Go. Yeah.
I was just gonna say that comes, that's like the next step, right? So you can't have that straight off the bat. Like, someone has to
lay the
accept,
foundation for it.
Exactly. We're going to be the generation that lays the foundations, and then we're going to make sure that those coming into this, moving forwards, future generations, don't just sell this out to the highest bidder.
I feel like Alex is thinking more like when you say protect the culture and protect the community, it's like, you know,
Yeah, preserve it.
don't do certain things, like, don't let preserve it, you know. But it's something Terror Danger said to me years ago, which never left my, and this speaks to this conversation. He said, if I don't do that remix for X, I'm not going to say who, then someone else will. You get what I'm, so you say preserve that, you know, if someone so work with such and such brand over there, they will. Dillinger and D-Bridge and Red Tear might not go to the top of the pops. FX will. You know what I'm saying? General Levy will. So it will always happen. Like, it will always come out of the village and be some other thing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
They did
At
protect
some
their
point,
shit for quite a long time.
Yeah. Because I feel, you know what, Alex did mention something about cultures being co-opted, which I totally agree with that. But then, Scratch, you know, when I always say this to you in terms of us also checking our internal dialogue and our internal dynamic within our community too, because how much of our art form or property are we willing to give away? There's some black artists that I know of that are comfortable moving within an exposure economy. So if that's the standard that you've set, no one's going to want to pay you if you've been comfortable, if you're okay with status symbols, if you're okay with doing a boiler room every 6 months and not getting paid for it. You know, if you set the standard for how you want to be treated, isn't that right? So it's I feel like it's more so, again, it surpasses an individual issue, and now we're looking at it as a collective now, because ultimately I think that once we work our way in and set a standard, then we can somehow move towards, I guess, shaking the greater external system, because it's like, oh, okay, wow, I've gone as a booker, I've gone to book this artist, and I'm undercutting them. They said no, they're not going to play the event. Okay, fine. This other black artist I've gone to, they've said no, they're not. They told me that their value, they're not gonna compromise. And you keep doing that, it sets a tone. It sets a level. It's a way of moving forward. Like, I feel like we also do need to assess our business in that sense, because it's going to get to a point where we can't depend on institutions to make those changes for us.
Yeah, I agree. Alex, this is something I want to ask you, maybe a little bit off topic, but someone who works with a record label who has both black and white artists on it, who've released black and white artists, you know, for many years on Eglo Records. Have you seen yourself like a difference when you're, say, releasing a Flowpoke compared to like a Miss Beats? Or you're trying to work a Miss Beats thing? Maybe Floating Points isn't a great example, but do you know what I mean? Do you see a clear difference?
I think that is a good example, because, to be honest, that was one of the first times when I really started to get a bit worried. For example, if we put on a party and Floating Points was the headliner, we were getting a certain type of crowd, and I was like, oh, whoa, what's going on here? Do you know what I mean? First of all, the tickets would just sell out straight away, so no one else could get tickets, right? So then I'm like, wow, the usual crew that used to just rock up on the door at flipping 2 o'clock in the morning, they ain't getting in anymore. Do you know what I mean? And I had to be really careful about, actually, I don't want to go down that road. Do you know what I mean? So I have to pull back a bit and focus more time and energy into doing those shows. And so be it on me. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, I'll do it in a smaller venue. I'll bring the artist that I want over, because ultimately I'm not doing this for money. Like, if I just wanted to do something for money, I wouldn't do music, because trust me, that's not where the money's at. You know what I mean? Like, part of what we do,
we're all fucked then, basically, because there's no tours, there's no gigs. It's so
you know what's crazy? That's what's crazy, is we've ended up in this situation because it didn't used to be like this.
It didn't used to be like that. Yeah.
It didn't.
Yeah. See, this is the thing. Like, as you've said that, but that's why I feel like I mean, I'm very grounded in the sense where we have a lot of work to do, but knowing that now it's become a numbers based game and it wasn't like that before, I do feel like significant change may be made, but it has to I feel like there are going to be more independent models adopted in all areas of the scene. You look at it now, even with from a record releasing perspective, I feel like they're going to be maybe more boutique level agencies that are established that can accommodate artists like myself, or those that aren't really seen as top tier, you know, whatever number bringing in DJs or producers, etc., that can sort of lay that foundation down in order to assist us to leverage our careers. But it, you know, because I feel like we're going to be knocking on some doors for a very long time if we're going to depend on these really heavy establishments. Your major labels, they're set, they've been designed that way. Your major labels, your agencies have been there for 2,000 years. Westwood, do you think Westwood's going anywhere? Westwood ain't going nowhere. Westwood is not going anywhere.
It might be going
It might be going somewhere.
Yeah, let's get unique in.
Hey.
All right, yeah. So I think we're gonna get unique in. Have you been listening to the conversation so far?
Yeah, I have. It's really good. I love it all.
Was there anything so far you've heard and you wanted to touch on, or you want to come in with your something else? So I know you actually have a lot to say. We spoke on the phone, was it a couple of weeks ago? In fact, I'm not sure how many people knew this, but I actually tried to arrange this not too long ago, wasn't it, with you guys? Alex, I got big up Alex. It was Alex's chat on the phone what actually made me want to do this again. But you know what I mean. So big up Alex for that. The white savior, honey, joking. Yeah, and you know, I wanted to get you and yourself and Claire Fifi talking because you both toured together, and I thought we could have had an interesting conversation there, but we couldn't work that one out. But yeah, just from your perspective as well, being in New Jersey as well. Actually, before you speak, you're someone that, like, you know, I feel that like your output, your music, the sound of your music, what you've done in the scene that you work in, and you know, your tours, your social media, just everything, the whole thing. I feel like it should be something what should be getting the 20 grand. I don't know what your fee is, but I feel like you should be getting 20 grand with Steve Aoki, right? No, but this is what should be happening, I feel. You know what I'm saying? And I want to know like how that what do you think about that? You know, but you know, do you feel like you're where you are is where you're supposed to be, or like do you feel that you've been you know, messed by the system? What's your thoughts?
I mean, where I am is where I'm supposed to be because like that's God divine timing. You know what I mean? So I'm not gonna like make it seem like I should be where I'm somewhere where I'm not. Definitely feel like I'm on the right journey. But as far as like, you know, just my success, I'm very sick of people saying that I'm like underrated or females that I found myself to be on lineups with are underrated. I'm really sick of that underdog behavior because we're bad bitches, you know, excuse my language. But, you know, for real, like I'm over that. So no more of that. But I'm definitely am over, you know, just not seeing the representation. When I first started out, I'm representing everybody in America. So, you know, it's just a bit different over here than it is over in the UK or in Europe. But it was definitely a lack of visibility for women that look like me who play electronic music, and just even a lack of resource to find out. Like if you didn't have a laptop or a cell phone, you couldn't go on Twitter or Tumblr or YouTube and find out who was a dope DJ. Of course, now with the birth of the internet, it's a lot more visibility, but you know, the visibility is seen, you know, now the visibility is that they're not even getting they're not even getting the credit that they deserve. You know what I mean? And I wanted to actually just speak a little bit on what KG was talking about as far as setting the standards, because I feel like, you know, it's definitely something we all need to do as a collective is set standards for ourselves, because you know, like she said, it sets the tone. It makes these brands realize, you know what, maybe, you know, asking them to do it for free is not, it's not working.
Word.
So we're gonna have to come up with some type of a budget. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I just really feel like we need to set the standard with each other and actually exchange those things. Like how you say, like, I don't know if you get Steve Aoki money. I'm not. I'm not getting no Steve Aoki, no Diplo, no Skrillex money. You feel me? But should I? Yes. And will I?
Hell
Soon,
yes.
you know, in due time. But when we set those standards, it will help situations like that, you know, like to say like, hey, like, do you have a budget? Could you make one? If you don't have one now, could we make one later when you do have a budget? Nobody doesn't have a budget forever.
So how do you feel? How do you feel that how Alex was mentioned earlier about working with? Like, I feel that Alex's opinion on working with brands is completely different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so someone like yourself, Alex, like you would say, like, you know, maybe like forget working with brands, full stop. That might be the way that we move.
No,
this
I wouldn't
thing
say full. I wouldn't say full stop. But going back to all the other points, is that they're only in it for their marketing and commercial
Yeah.
interests, right? So they don't represent your culture. They'll dash you away as soon as they don't need you anymore. So it's not a sustain. I'm not saying don't do collaborations with brands. I'm saying it's not a sustainable way to work. It doesn't have a long-term future for your culture or subculture, and it doesn't represent you or your people at all. It doesn't care. It's careless. It only accounts to its shareholders.
Definitely.
That's what I was saying, like previously on Twitter about that. Our benchmark for success. Where have we set it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
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 I agree. I definitely think that, you know, even with working with those brands, like instead of trying to, something that I've been experiencing a lot of, and I'm pretty sure a lot of peers can relate, is a lot of these brands are trying to use us as their voice and their face of diversity to be that representation, without, you know, empowering our own platform. So I have to get on your platform and say this, that, and the third about being Black, so you guys could look good, instead of you guys taking responsibility within your team to actually hire somebody who's on staff who could actually speak for your company instead of hiring an outside resource. And also them just not uploading our platforms. Like, say for instance, like I have put, oh, I feel like I wanted to write an open letter to the industry as a Black independent musician. And I was like, maybe I should make it a YouTube. So instead of taking my YouTube, when I did upload it, a brand just wanted to have me put it on their site. That's not uplifting, you know, a Black voice. That's just trying to have them uplift your platform for clickbait because it's cool right now. So I definitely just think in those sorts, we have to be mindful about who we work with, why we work with, and when do we work with them. Yeah,
absolutely. Because especially as now it's, you know, if we're looking at this as a whole brand publications, just realizing that we've existed just 2 weeks ago, even looking at that and saying, well, right, okay, the exposure economy is, as Alex was saying, is this sustainable? Where have we using each of these things as stepping stones as opposed to the determining factors for our talent and success. Okay, a mention in Mixed Mag is amazing. It's great. Listen, I'm here for it. Do you know what I mean? But it's like, it's not the do all and end all, especially if you're going out of your way to then request me to labor to do something for you. There has to be some sort of compensation there. That's how we build our economy too. How is it that still, you know, because we have to think about it. We have to look at the biases that we have to contend with on not only being Black, obviously Unique and I being Black and female, you know, and
I'd like to say that I'm Black as well, so I'm also Black.
Yes, you are, Scratch. Yes, you are. You know, looking at that and race has nuance. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of nuance to the issue of race, but having those things as obstacles, and then alongside that being at the bottom of the social economical ladder too, that something has got to give. Something has definitely got to give, you know, in regards to that. But it is ultimately down to us really policing our intellectual property. And as Alex was saying, you know, talking about protecting the culture, and it shouldn't stop at, oh yeah, I've been featured here, it's cool. Oh yeah, but you know what, that platform's gonna create awareness. Let me tell you something, after that stream is done, people go back to their business. You still got bills to pay. you still got to eat.
Yeah.
Check what's crazy though, right? Is that a lot of what we do, what we're involved in, it came from a place of having the door closed, right? People started up
Yeah.
record labels and club nights because they weren't accepted by anywhere else. And then once, you know, we created a culture that was commercially viable, then people was interested in getting involved. Do you know what I mean? So it's like there was a breaking point where, in a sort of, you know, grassroots community cottage industry type way, there was a thriving industry and a creative economy, but it got handed over to people who started doing all the carrot dangling, and they created a new, you know, they're very savvy. Do you know what I mean? For every new sort of, what do you call it, like the zeitgeist of the day, how things work, how things operate, and now you've got like the whole social media thing and the algorithm and all this kind of stuff. That's like the zeitgeist of now. You know, they tapped into that shit, man. They know how it works, and it's based on slot machines and all this type of stuff. You know what I mean? We got to take it back to where they took it from.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
it's true.
I got. Can I just say, we've also still got AG to get in. I would like to get AG in.
I
Barry.
got a jet now, don't I? I need to step out.
No. I was gonna say I could, yeah, maybe because I think it'd be nice to have or I could leave and just leave you guys with Alex and just have a live mauling of like the white.
You got to curate those scratch. Let me.
I'm only playing. I'm playing. No, but I'd like to speak to you guys. You know what I mean? I'd like to speak because I feel like there's a good chat to be had between you three, if that's cool. You know what I'm saying? But Alex, I know, Alex, I did you because we spoke for like over an hour on the phone the other day, and you got so many ideas. I know you did get a few out today, but I feel like your ideas, you know, and your thinking of the going back to the village should be put onto paper. So you know what I mean? So we can. No, for real.
Yeah,
so you know what I mean? Because it's good ideas.
Before I bounce, I do want to say that, you know, we're talking about things in like pre-existing concepts. We can find new ways to do things. We can create things from scratch that didn't exist before. We can find new approaches and new business models and new formats and ways to do things. So we got to be as creative as we are. We got to be creative about how we do business. You know what I mean?
Yes. I love that. Thank you so much.
Bless up, Alex, man.
That
Bless up.
was
Bless up.
beautiful.
Scratch, you got to keep doing this, man. You got to keep doing this.
Yeah, Alex is on point.
Yeah, for real. I'm gonna try, man. We have to have these discussions for sure. I'll send it out to the people in the chat room as well, getting the gems right now. I've totally not been but big up the chat room and big up Alex, man. Best out. Send it out to Eglo Records, man. I love Eglo, man. Oh, okay, he's gone. All right, so what we?
Take care,
he's back.
guys, man.
Yeah.
Take care, man. Peace.